Is the world run by psychopaths? I think it is. And that's more than an opinion. It's a hypothesis, a scientific hypothesis, even though I'm not a scientist. I'm not a psychologist and much less a neurologist, but I have watched enough YouTube videos. And from what I understand by actual professional psychologists is that there's a big difference between sociopaths and psychopaths. And the major difference is that sociopaths are made and psychopaths are born. In other words, sociopaths, people who usually commit a lot of crimes and antisocial behavior, they usually feel a little guilty about it, and it's mostly a psychological problem. Whereas psychopaths, they seem to have a neurological blockage when it comes to empathy. And, please, in the comments down below, prove me wrong. The last thing I want to do is misinform people. But basically, psychopaths seem to be people who are just incapable of empathy for others. And obviously not all psychopaths are killers and murderers. If I'm not mistaken, there's a lot of psychopaths, for example, brain surgeons and just surgeons in general. It's not that they don't care about their patients or anything like that, but they can be very detached. And so there's high functioning psychopaths. But I'm talking about the ones that are, for example, dictators, especially crime bosses, the Pablo Escobars and El Chapos of the world, mafia, crime bosses and whatnot. And I'm not really even talking, obviously, about the other psychopaths on a micro scale or on an individual scale, like serial killers like Ted Bundy and whatnot. No, the psychopaths that I'm trying to think that I'm talking about, blabbing about on this video, would be obviously the Adolf Hitlers, the Joseph Stalins of the world, the Fidel Castros who have imprisoned people like this. These are the people who rule the world and do with it as they will. And we need to do a better job of identifying these people, and especially of not idolizing them and not putting them on these pedestals as people have done with dictators like Fidel Castro in particular. He seems to be, there's a great book called Hollywood's Favorite Tyrant by Umberto Fontova. I highly recommend reading that book. And it's amazing what they can get away with. It's amazing the amount of people that they imprison and they have murdered. And it's just amazing to me how these are the people who usually reach the highest levels of power. And I think it's because they don't lose any sleep over it. They don't lose any sleep over the people who are dying in order for them to stay in power. And now it's not only just dictators from other countries. Look, I think someone like Donald Trump, I think he may very well be a psychopath. And again, not because I think he's a killer or anything like that. I just think people like him, perhaps Obama maybe, most US presidents, many CEOs, these are people who can be easily detached from the consequences of their decisions that involve the suffering of other people. And to a large degree, empathy should have its limits. You can't feel sorry for everything, but you should feel sorry for people who you're going to make suffer when you don't need to make them suffer just because of your own selfish gain, namely being in power or being as wealthy as possible. And it's just interesting when you look at the richest people, not to pick on Elon Musk again, because I talked about him in another video. And again, I have great admiration for Elon Musk. But I don't think you get to those positions when you know that you have to lay off thousands of people, or let alone kill people, or make negotiations with governments that are killing people needlessly, like what's going on in China with the Muslim Uyghur camps, what's gone on in the Middle East, and yeah, it's just something that I remember seeing a magazine titled "Do Psychopaths Rule the World?" It is to this day the one magazine I regret not spending what it was $4 or $5 on it at the grocery store. And on the cover, it was littered with a bunch of, it was like a collage, a photo collage of dictators from Hitler to Vladimir Putin. I remember Hitler and Vladimir Putin especially being on that cover. I so wish I would have bought that. And one really interesting thing was, and I don't know if they even made the distinction between psychopaths and sociopaths. I started reading the article, and in the article it talked about how these top tier psychopaths, they know how to find other psychopaths and sociopaths to do their bidding. You have to delegate, after all. You can't do everything by yourself. No man rules alone. And how they managed to do that. And well, someone like Adolf Hitler, clearly a psychopath. Joseph Goebbels, Heinrich Himmler, his inner circle of evil, every single one of those men were psychopaths. And it's interesting, it's usually men. And I'm not saying this as a wannabe feminist or anything like that, a male feminist. It's just, it seems like the majority of dictators have always been men. And especially the dictators that come from nothing, that rise from not being in a position of power. And especially someone like Hitler. I don't believe he grew up poor, but he definitely didn't grow up in power or anything like that. And in that article, they were talking about how they managed to spot other people willing to do their bidding, and then it just kind of goes down. And that's why you get what seems to be a cancer in society with these dictatorships. And I think that analogy of cancer in a society is an apt one. It kind of does function that way, especially when I'm not an oncologist either, but if I'm not mistaken, the way cancer works is when you start getting defective cells in a body and they don't get counteracted by the healthier cells. And then you start to get a tumor, and then that tumor can branch out and grow. And that's the extent that I can remember of a YouTube video on cancer and how it functions. And I also did another video on that, which I'll link it down below, about how Castro's communism took over Cuba like a cancer. And yes, I like the alliteration of all those C's. Anywho, just another video I wanted to put out there. And I hope it makes sense to people. I hope it can help us or help anyone out there in doing a better job of spotting psychopaths who want to be in positions of power over you. And it's not always at the national level. Sometimes it's at your local government level. Sometimes it could be your own boss or a new manager you might even have. Something worth thinking about. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Check out the links down below if you want to buy any of my original art or merchandise. And by all means, please comment down below if you think I'm full of crap, if I'm way off the mark. And thanks for watching.